Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution we know we need. April 18th was the founding convention for the Toronto Tenant Union, the TTU. We were excited. We were not going to miss this. Both Santiago and I were there on the ground, and we are now reporting back to you. It was a really great experience overall. I mean, this isn't a wholly new organization that has started. The reason we were so excited was because it's actually a merger of two groups that we've had on the show before, the York Southwestern Tenant Union and Climate Justice Toronto, or CJTO. Acronyms everywhere. And I will get some of them wrong, I'm sure. But, you know, Santiago, as soon as we heard York Southwestern, we're ready to sign up.
Yeah, the York Southwestern Tenant Union has a very special place in my heart amongst organizing in Toronto. They've been doing amazing work for several years. Not only have they led what I believe is the largest rent strike in the history of Toronto, at least. I might have to fact check myself on that. But it's also just the way that they've gone about their organizing. You know, they've always centered building community. And just there's someone who understands that we can't always be on the defensive when it comes to fighting for our rights. They're strong advocates. They've pretty much been leading the chase in Toronto, fighting against stuff like I got all these bills mixed up now. Was it Bill 90? Bill 60?
Bill 60, which just passed. Yeah. But yeah, we also heard them bragging about how they helped shut down FieldStar, that AI tool landlords were using to artificially increase rents. Like they need any help.
Yeah. Although Bill 60 did pass, it didn't pass with everything included. They had to remove, for example, ending the automatic renewal of leases, where once you finish your year lease, it just goes month to month indefinitely. Landlords wanted to take that away so that they could evict tenants easier, bring in higher paying tenants. That was removed. York Southwestern Tenant Union fought very hard for that. They were some of the leaders in the fight. I've been there on the ground, seeing them fight against illegal evictions, for example, putting themselves on the line. You know, they're really an amazing organization. So the idea of them coming together with a group like Climate Justice Toronto to launch a Toronto-wide tenant union feels like such a natural extension of that work that they've been doing. And we really need this in the city.
No, I was so excited, especially Climate Justice TO. When we spoke to them almost 2 years ago now, but we'll link the episode. They were in this transition. It seems like an odd pairing, right? Climate Justice Toronto is forming a tenant union, but they did at the event, and they did it in our episode, a great job of explaining why they're doing that shift. And it makes so much sense to us too, based on what we do here. And all of the tenant stories that we've heard is they became assistants to the tenants union. They were doing whatever they could to kind of help, which now makes sense to come to this larger project of the Toronto Tenant Union. I wonder if they envisioned this. Yeah, I think we called the episode with them Shifting Gears, because that's exactly what they were doing. So I feel like this is culminated into this huge event. I think they estimated about 300 people were there. And I imagine more than that are ready to sign up to be in the tenant union, right? Whether they're ad hoc members or small buildings, large buildings that have already organized. The idea was to have a single union across the city that could, be that much more powerful. So we did a really good job of collecting stories throughout the day that we're going to share with you. I just want to set the stage a little bit. It was in a school down in the West End. I had free parking. So I was super excited about that. But we felt we were on like the precipice of something historic. We were giddy when we arrived. What were you expecting?
I don't know what I was expecting, but just being there, seeing that many people all coming together for something like this, it was well put on. There was good food, lunch and dinner provided, and I was just so hopeful about what this could mean. It felt like we were witnessing a moment in history where maybe the fight changes a little more in our favor. Tenant issues being like such a great place for us to like put our energy in fighting against. I wish I had the stats on me, but is it 50% of Toronto is tenants, something like that?
The province is 30,
which you can imagine is just so much higher in the city. I know in my neighborhood in Parkdale, it's 90% are tenants. And when it comes to the exploitation that we can experience, I mean, landlords have been getting away with so much shit. It hasn't stayed neutral on their front. Landlords are constantly fighting to make our lives more and more difficult, to make it easier and easier for them to exploit. We know rent evictions are on the rise. The use of above-guideline rent increases are on the rise. Overall, we know that landlords are taking the fight to us. So it's nice to see that like now we're building the capacity to be able to fight back harder en masse, and so that people who want to get into the fight but maybe don't know how now have an avenue that makes that a little bit easier for them.
Absolutely. And some structure. That is a tactical decision, but surely it's going to help that a lot of these folks are not just going to have to walk and figure this all out by themselves. I loved it. It was in a school cafeteria. It was lined with banners that, read tenant power and stop raising rents. There was clear class consciousness as well, both in the speeches that introduced the event. Climate Justice Toronto openly avows themselves as socialists, right? And the goal is to take housing off the market. Like that is the long-term goal of the project. And hearing that right off the bat and everyone booing Doug Ford at the appropriate moments, it was a really good kickoff. And so obviously we had our eye out for Ricardo Tranjan. And we did, in fact, bump into him. So I think it's suiting that we kick off our interviews with Ricardo. He talks about his expectations for the day.
Yeah, he was a bit of a celebrity that day. He had his book, The Tenant Class, which we spoke about on the show. We interviewed.
I got mine signed.
Yeah, I wish I brought mine. Funny story. I'm in the middle of a move right now, and when my landlord was coming by to do a little move out inspection, I made sure to leave a copy of the Tenant Class in clear view so they knew not to fuck with me. But no, it was great seeing. This felt like such an embodiment of that philosophy that went into that book, of the tenant class as a point of organizing. We've heard a lot of talk about the working class, but this is really like another avenue to organize, and now we have the union with which to fight with.
Yeah, Ricardo looked as excited as we were. Ricardo, we figured we'd find you here, author of the Tenant Class. This is definitely the kind of crowd that would appreciate your work. Everyone is really excited. The room is buzzing. How are you feeling going into the formation of a Toronto Tenant Union?
Well, this is extremely exciting. We talk a lot about housing in the media. The politicians love talking about housing. The researchers and pundits like myself talk about housing all the time. And we're always talking about the policy solutions, whereas what we really need is a political response. And then I think that's what these folks here are putting together today, a real political response, not a policy solution, not a policy tweak, but a real political response to the issue.
Do you see this as a key step in forming this tenant class, this different kind of mindset of looking at how we approach housing? You know, you heard them say we need to take housing off of the market, and the crowd cheered. That must have made you feel pretty good, right? That's where you were going with your book.
Yes, this is one more step. These folks have been doing some amazing organizing work for years, and then they got here now, and they are now inviting more people under this tent, and I think there's an immense need for that. Through my work, I get to move around a bit and talk to people who are really interested in forming a tenant union, in getting together with other tenants and in fighting back. But often it can be a little bit hard to do that. Where do I even start? The landlord is so powerful. It's so hard to find time to get everyone together. And once we do get together, what are we going to do? What are the next steps? The mechanics of it can actually be a little bit intimidating and hard to pull that together. And so that this one group is getting together with a few other groups that already has that experience, and then inviting anyone to come under the tent. It's really amazing. It's necessary, and I think it responds very directly to a very concrete need on the ground. People want to organize, people are ready to fight back, but sometimes they need to know how, and if they come here, they're going to learn how.
Yeah, people seem to be excited to go through what they call like the nitty-gritty, right? Mm-hmm. These steps, the structure, the vision. What are you hoping comes out of this? What's your best case scenario, your expectations for today?
As an observer, as someone, step outside of this, I just like what I've seen it. I think they are, from the get-go, building a open, democratic process. It's tenant-driven, it's for and it's by tenant. The tenant union are the people in the room. They're going to make all the calls. People like myself, researchers, lawyers, people with technical knowledge in construction, whoever has something to bring to the table and is willing to support, I think we will be welcome to, but with the clear understanding that they're calling the shots, they're telling us what to do. It's the tenant union led by tenants, and if they tell me what they need, if I can, I will do it, and I think that's the relationship that needs to be established from the day one, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing I thought that they could draw on your expertise for is, one of the questions is going to be, who is a member of the tenant union? Mm-hmm. Obviously a tenant of a landlord, that's the obvious answer, but there's questions on whether children who live at home with their parents, or, not children, youth, or couch surfers, or folks who are unhoused living in encampments. I thought, or homeowners. One of the suggestions is perhaps homeowners who are recent homeowners who want to be part of this tenant movement should be allowed to be part of the tenant movement. Do you have an opinion on that? Even though you're not going to be a voting member, I feel like, are they part of the tenant class?
I think the key question here is one of mobilizing resources broadly, but then leaving for the group that has the legitimacy to decide where and how those resources are deployed. Sorry, that's a little bit of a runaround question, but I think it is a big part of any movement is to figure out how to galvanize the level of resources that you need, and that involves some hard decisions about homeowners, about people who are in different political places in terms of the political spectrum, right? What if some tenant with very strong conservative views come in, and so on and so forth. So there are these very difficult, very real, difficult questions that the movement's going to have to address. But I think fundamentally, that's the point. We want to galvanize resources, but then once you do have those resources, I think it's only that democratic elected leadership that has the legitimacy to make the decisions on how to deploy those resources, right? I think that's...
Yeah. I think, that was a very politically correct way of saying what I said. I was just like, well, they can take their dues, but maybe don't let them vote. Because, this takes a lot of resources to put on in the fight that they have. So, it's a question that the membership will have to decide for themselves, which is the exciting part, right? Where is everybody at? So I very much appreciate you taking the time to answer some questions. We just dragged you out of the convention. So, thank you, Ricardo.
I look forward to the episode.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Ricardo talks about some of the discussions that we ended up hearing on the floor after we spoke to him. I don't think they anticipated having so much discussion on these items. It was very true to form of any convention you've ever been to. Leftists did not have enough time to really get into these because they weren't easy decisions. This was a founding convention. I can't imagine the pressure on folks trying to organize to this end, but to start with, when you checked in, you were given a founding document. So people had already put the work in to create what they called a city of tenants. It's broken down into sections like where we are, what we're fighting for, how we win, and what now. This was something folks did have access to beforehand to some level. And folks were asked, do you agree? Do you disagree? Let's bring some amendments to the floor. And there were amendments. I don't think they went through them all, but two of the major discussions that took place, as you heard Ricardo talk about, like who is a tenant? Who should be not just a member, but it was like an ideological question too, right? Who is part of this tenant class? Who can we trust? Who will we put our resources to? And then, yes, the second major discussion that they had was essentially, will we participate in electoral politics? We've got some opinions on that.
Yeah, listeners of the show will not be surprised what our opinions are on the electoral politics. But it was a very interesting discussion. I think it was interesting to see that it was fairly evenly divided on the topic as to whether or not, there should be an involvement in electoral politics. And if there is, what should that look like? Are we going to put money behind that? Is it just going to be, in name or just purely volunteer time? What kind of resources go into this? It's almost a shame that, given the limitations of it being, one day in person, it's a shame that, we couldn't dig into these things a little bit deeper. But you could see, it was fairly evenly split on that, right?
I think in terms of whether or not to participate in electoral politics was split, right? You even in the interviews that you'll hear a few folks invoke the NDP and other political figures that, policy-driven type change. But it was ultimately a measure, I think, of the class consciousness in the room, too, when it was like, okay, we might support these folks, but are we going to use the badly needed resources that we're going to accumulate towards that end? Right? It's one thing to, they might have had mixed feelings on whether or not you abandon electoral politics, but I think judging by all the stories that they had and how many resources these folks need to wage a decent fight, most of them were very reluctant to spend those resources on a candidate, on a campaign.
Yeah.
One thing I found really interesting, though, when they're talking about, in the existing documents, and I think the audience will find this interesting, I hope, is they set a list of criteria. So it wasn't just like, will we endorse a candidate and then argue about their merits? They were, at the founding of their organization, already trying to put thresholds and very specific criteria on potential political candidates to earn their trust and their endorsement.
Yeah. Very high bars, mind you.
Most notably, the 10% of their salary would go to the tenant union. And that raised, that is very interesting for a lot of reasons. One, like, it is the Toronto Tenant Union, but it's actually not the only one, right? So to get 10% of those resources for an endorsement seems like a risky move for a politician to make for a lot of reasons. But I think, like, they were on purpose setting the bar very high.
So it's not like Olivia Chow is ever going to be endorsed by the Toronto Tenant Union, right? Like, this, like, criteria means it'll only be people who are, like, the most committed. And with and they even outline, like, with a proven track record of commitment towards the tenant fight in Toronto, something that definitely no one who's currently sitting on the city council or the mayor, nor I can't even think of any candidates who have ever reached that bar in Toronto.
Well, I would argue, like, Kiara, one of the founding members of York Southwestern Tenants, a lot of folks talked about her campaign and what it did for centering tenants in the political discussion. And I think folks were still hopeful. Even Kiara, got on the floor herself and mentioned that she saw real hope in getting a tenant on city council. In the end, I think membership decided that they were definitely open to possibly endorsing a candidate should they meet all these criteria. That passed, but easily they shot down the idea of using their fund towards a campaign. So it'll be interesting how they navigate that moving forward. But, the real class consciousness question came around who was a tenant. And it wasn't just homeowners like we asked Ricardo, right? It was, should it be people who work for the landlord? Now, sometimes that's like a floor supervisor, depending on how big your building is, or it's just the person who lives there and takes care of the place. A lot of folks attested that, like, this, sometimes that person was the glue that held their building together, but that's kind of felt like, oh, I talked to a good cop. What did you think about that discussion and how it ended up?
It's a difficult topic, absolutely. And something, as a tenant myself, I sympathize with. I think of, like, the super in my building, who also, they do a lot of, like, the cleaning work around here. Someone who is probably the person in my building that I'm closest with, right? Do I think that their interests are different than my interests? I don't. But it also is very reminiscent of kind of the conversation when it comes to, like, classical unions of management being involved in the union, right? And the stance has long been that management has different interests. And we all know, like, I'm sure a lot of us out here have worked for good managers. Some of us maybe have even been managers who have been very sympathetic to the workers' cause, and that's great, and that definitely exists. But on a whole, looking at it, like, there's always been a reason why management has been excluded. When your interest, like your salary, is tied to this, it's a different kind of interest. It's difficult, and I think that those challenges were very reflected in the conversations around it, where people had very strong opinions about it, were very twisted on it.
I think some of those strong opinions, though, came from personal anecdotes. And when it's very compelling when someone gets on the mic and says, I'm about to be voted out of the union. And it's hard to, like, look that person in the face and be like, I can live with that, because we have to think of the long-term vision, not just, the feelings and inclusions of absolutely every good person. So they found a bit of a medium there where, at least on the discussion of homeowners, they can actually be associate members where, like I said to Ricardo, they could pay dues, but they're not going to have voting rights. Remember, this passed really, really easy. But when it came to the discussion of these other roles, including, I love that part of the amendment was cops, right? So someone moved an amendment that nobody who works for the landlord should be a member, no cops, no spouses of cops. I believe that was everybody. But I think the multiple inclusions made the discussion a little bit more difficult. I would have loved to see that pass. I don't think it did in the end.
No, but there was a very clear support on the floor for like not including cops. It was just a difficulty of what does it mean for all staff of landlords, you know?
Yeah.
Does that include the plumber? You know? It's a difficult question, but these are the kind of questions, you know, when you're trying to form an organization of this size, like it's important to answer, and it's difficult to do so with a time constraint. But I mean, those of us with convention experience, that's how it always is, right?
Yeah, I won't lie. We both had flashbacks of conventions that we've been to. I think it's an incredible challenge trying to do what they're doing at the moment. And we witnessed a little bit of growing pains where, you know, definitely more people wanted to speak on issues. Some people weren't perhaps happy with the outcome. So this is something they're going to have to do moving forward, is navigating folks across the political spectrum. But it was grassroots democracy in its infancy here. And what we did hear, as a lot of people got to the mic to speak for or against, was there, and in the speeches, a common thread of these horror stories with landlords. We've told them here many times on Blueprints before. There are so many. And that's good news, bad news. It's awful that so many people deal with this, but it is a uniting element, right? And there's this theme of not doing that fight alone, right? That just ran right through this event.
One thing that like I want to mention that was a really cool part of you know, being there in person, seeing a lot of the tenants from some of the original rent strikes and organizing that the York Southwestern Tenant Union has done, all got bussed in together, and they were all wearing their they had branded hoodies that said, what was it? I
fought a rent strike and won, or
yeah, something like along those lines. And that was just really great to see, because, you know, it also goes to show the reach, you know, because I mean, there was a lot of people there who come from like our activist background, as many of us do. We have different causes across the city, different things that are interested in. But like one thing that they spoke about was like that this group of people spoke about, a lot of them never saw themselves as activists, or maybe never even paid that much attention to politics beforehand, but through organizing for their rights, through fighting for their rights, for tenants' rights, you know, they found themselves getting involved in this, and now they're fighting not just for their own rights, but for the rights of tenants across the city.
Yeah, even Jerry, we're talking to him. He's at this convention. He's fighting the good fight, and he's like, well, I'm not an organizer. I'm behind the scenes. It's reluctance, right? Like, you are in fact an activist, my friend, and an organizer. But yeah, we're going to hear from Jerry and Steve from 240 Markland. It's a building out in Etobicoke. And, you know, they too have a horror story of a landlord, but they do a great job, I think, of talking to why we needed a Toronto Tenant Union and then some.
One of the big focuses you're going to hear about in this conversation is above-guideline rent increases. And I'm sure a lot of listeners are familiar, but just in case, just to go over it again, you know, here in Ontario, we do have a kind of rent control where buildings built before 2018 can only increase rent by an amount set by the province every year. I think last year it was like 2.5% or something along those lines, every single year. Now, there's loopholes that landlords use, and the above guideline rent increases is one of them, where if they have any maintenance or construction projects that are a significant capital investment, well, then they can apply to increase the rent beyond that provincially set guideline. Now, a lot of times, one thing you'll see is changes made to exteriors of buildings, renovations on balconies, you know, aesthetic changes that do very little for the quality of life of the tenants, but that allow landlords to be able to jack up their rents more, and they're making money off of that. And one of the issues with above guideline rent increases is, a lot of times landlords will simply go and say, we're raising your rent more pending approval from the landlord and tenant board, but they're already started charging you before they even got approval. So tenants are left kind of wondering, do I have to pay this? Do I not have to pay this increased rent? And we're seeing more and more frequently landlords who are pursuing this year after year. You'll have one year, one the next year, and the next year. And that's something that very much happened to Jerry's building out in Etobicoke. So I'll let Jerry take it away from here.
Okay, you're going to record?
You get to get started.
Okay. So it's my understanding that the two of you organized within your own building against an AGI. Is that right?
Not me. It was another guy, Mike. I've been in the background the whole time, but it was Mike and Steve that did all the organizing. So I'm a supporter more than an organizer.
Okay, so myself and another gentleman did organize a tenant association to fight back against AGIs in our building. We're currently on the fifth consecutive year of AGIs in our building. We just recently had the first one go to the hearing. Obviously we lost because the AGI's process and hearing, it's, for lack of a better term, it's a kangaroo court, but just in March 2026, we received our fifth consecutive AGI in our building.
But you're just contesting the first now.
Well, no, we just recently, the first one just just got completed.
Because of the delays.
Because of the delay in the
court,
system, yeah.
When tenants have claims.
Correct.
Right. So how long was it between your inception as, a tenant organization, officially or not, to when you organized against this AGI? Or was that at the same time? Is that what the impetus was to organize?
To be honest, it was pretty much around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of what caused that to happen was because of the first AGI and the bad treatment of the landlord, right? We understood and realized that something had to happen, so that's when people started getting on board and pushing their way through.
So your tenant union is joining the Toronto Tenant Union,
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
How many members do you have here today?
Today, there's just the two of us. We were supposed to have a few other people here, but it didn't work out. So today, the representation's just the two of us. I'm not going to sing the song, but yeah, you guys get the idea. But you and I. But we are here on behalf of the 240 Markland Tenants Association. So.
And how excited are you that you're going to be part of a larger union after this?
I was just telling Bruno how ecstatic we are to be here and that he's gotten this grassroots
you can see that when this thing goes, it's going to go fast and hard. We're already talking about, like, you can see when Toronto organizes in the outlining cities like Hamilton, for example, they were the first city that put the bylaws against rent evictions. You know darn well that those TAs are going to hear this, see this, and it's going to be a domino effect. I think that probably by end of the year, probably most of Ontario would probably be involved in somehow with the larger tenants association union. So I think this is nothing but positive.
Do you want to take a moment to speak to the importance of tenant organizing, how you've seen a difference in how you relate to the people in your building and how that then turns the tables in terms of your relationship with your landlord?
Yes.
You mean me personally or the tenants as a whole? Like,
You can answer to both, but I'd love to hear your personal.
okay, so it's
Here, let me put this first. I'll put my piece in first. So Steve is like the spokesperson for us. He's our book guy. He learned, like, when we go to fight with the landlord, he knows his stuff. So due to that, they have spent so much money and time and effort trying to, they have false claims. They're trying to get him evicted. He's actually got a personal case in front of the LTB right now.
currently in
That had
court.
to be, yeah.
I'm currently fighting.
So they're, because they know that he's the snake. If they cut the head off the snake dies because he's the guy. He's the one who stands up for everybody. Unfortunately, I think our building relies a little bit too much on the poor guy. But so I can say that the TA is so important in our building because of guys like Steve and Mike is another huge one. There's like 5 or 6 different people that have put their things in towards making it a stronger association.
The real reason there was a need for a tenant association is there was a large percentage of seniors in the building. So the problem that we were facing was that high percentage of seniors, no computer savvy, no internet. Like they didn't know what to do. Like when the landlord was saying, "Oh, we're switching to an online portal," people didn't even know what that was. They wanted to convert everybody to like online payments and no more checks, and like things like that. We put it like it's.
They were very intimidating when they first bought the building, and well, because again, going back, they wanted to rip our building down, and the city of Toronto said no. So then they basically, it was right out of TV land, where they did almost everything except for sending gangs of thugs to push us out of our apartments. Probably 35-40% of the people actually left just due to the harassment and bullying from our landlords. So now, again, that was kind of the reason why we decided, well, we had to do something. We had to stand up for these people.
It's what's taken place at our building. It's like right out of like an 80s TV show. If like the what they've done to get rid of legacy tenants, it's like you could put it on a YouTube channel. It's bad. Like and people have given up. It's just, and like we've gone to great lengths to fight for people and fight on behalf of people, and like it's not only that people don't have a voice, but like people or seniors, and they didn't even know how to fight,
and they're scared to fight.
And they're scared to fight. Like some people, people are scared to put in a work order for, like we have tenants who have been in the building for 50 years, and they're scared to put in a work order because their 50-year-old vanity is falling apart, not because they've done anything wrong, but because it's 50 years old, and because the landlords led them to believe that they'll be evicted if they do anything about it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's bad.
One thing I wanted to ask about was when it comes to the fight against AGI, it's my understanding that typically AGIs, it's like 200-300 pages of documents that you have to go through, right? Okay. Which it can get like expensive really quickly, right?
Well, it depends, right? It all depends on. I don't know that I would agree with that. Can it be 200 or 300 pages?
That was the average that I heard.
Well, yeah. I don't know. I don't know that I could agree with that. There's so many variables. It depends. It depends on what they're AGIing you for. It depends what's involved. It depends on what kind of construction. To be honest, that's a number that I don't know that I could agree with. Right?
The reason I was going to ask about it was just simply about like the difficulty with being able to fight these things. It takes legal understanding, hiring paralegals and stuff, right?
And that's the funny part too, is in the process of us doing this, is we found out really fast that there is very little legal representation for tenants associations within Ontario. Even in our first hearing, they actually admitted right at the LTB that there's one or two at best, and neither of them would even talk to us.
So where were you going with your question?
It was pretty much just about how stuff like Toronto Tenant Union can be able to help out when new fights are coming out, people who haven't previously been organized and don't have the resources to be able to do it, to be able to connect with that. Like, are you hopeful that like this will help? Help new groups be able to find the resources that they need to be able to fight back.
Yeah, and then hopefully that this union will allow people that connection to find resources. The secondary problem, which is more so the first problem, is that hopefully this union will be able to even find those resources, because those resources aren't really even there. Like one thing that, pointing to what Jerry was saying, one thing that we learned quick is those resources are so scarce. Like the legal aid that is advertised. So what happens is in an AGI process or an eviction process, whatever the process is, whatever the action is that the landlord is taking against you as per the legal process, you're provided a document that says if you require legal advice or if you require ... legal aid, these are the phone number, this is the phone number, this is the email address, this is the website, okay, as an example. Hopefully I'm not getting too in-depth for you guys.
No.
Okay? The problem is, it leads you nowhere. Okay? Like it's all a dead end. The resources that they claim to be there aren't there. I don't know if they just think they're there and they're not, or if they just want you chasing your tail, the resources aren't really there. The resources we were able to obtain were through organizations like Bruno's, York Southwestern, or people will be able to find it now that there's a tenant union. The only reason we were able to find the resources we were is because we connected with other associations. If you're going to rely on the legal aid or whatever was provided,
Politicians saying follow these steps.
it's not there. It was really our resilience that got us to where we got, and a few people in our tenant association that really worked hard to basically get where we were. Like, it's like people really need this tenant union. It's that's why we're so ecstatic about it. It's needed. Like, I don't know that we're there yet, but this thing needs to be funded. Like, as I said, it might be a pipe dream, but like it needs to be looked at where something like this is funded. It's one day, because where they think they're putting their money and where they think they're providing a resource, it really isn't. And we were able to find resources and move forward in our fight. I'm kind of tooting our horn here. I'm good. Mike's good. Not to go against
Well,
people.
you came highly recommended.
And Bruno's good. Like but people give up. Not to shame, not to put negative, but like
It's reality.
like I don't give up. Like, I'm bad like that. Like, I'm that chihuahua that won't stop, right? It's just but
Got
people
that dog in you.
But people don't have that. So like, and the LTV knows it. Right? Like, and that's where I'm going with that. It's not a me thing. It's just that's part of like, they know after the third or fourth phone call or the third or fourth email to this paralegal or to this legal clinic that like you're going to give up. And we got those closed doors and we got those dead ends. Like, it's because we didn't give up.
Yeah, the media, we attached ourselves to every media possible. Majority of them wanted nothing to do with it. Like, it's the whole Ontario landlord-tenant association relationship it's fixed, and that's why this excites me so much, because throughout history there's only one thing that stands firm, and that's power in numbers. And the more people you get, the stronger you get. This thing goes across Ontario, like, I'm hoping the governments, all three levels of governments, will have to listen. When you have that many people, like millions of people in one organization, they have to stop and listen to us finally.
Our building has been covered 3 times by the CBC.
Nice.
Yeah, like, if you look up 240 Markland Drive in Etobicoke, you will find 3 editorials on our building.
We saw the CBC here as well today.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's important folks hear those stories so that they know it's possible.
You will see us, you will hear us, and you will read on our building.
Because we only got number 1 done. We got 4 to go yet, so we got a lot of fight to go. So.
Where is your building? Which branch are you going to be a part of once you leave here?
Okay, so technically we would be in an Etobicoke branch.
Okay.
But there isn't one yet. But this is the inaugural meeting. So
yeah, because as you saw the map that they posted earlier, we're like Bloor and Markland. So it's here. No, sorry, you can't see me. It's the York one or the City of Toronto one. We're kind of like right smack dab in the middle.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
And
there's one for the core, there's one for the kind of the west end, and then everything east of the Don Valley.
we'd be West End, I
we'd
guess.
be west. We're west south because again we're like
Centennial Park area.
Okay.
yeah.
So
I think, yep. So you'll be part of a larger family immediately, right? The
Yes,
branch will be
actually,
formed
yeah.
today. You'll be put in touch with other tenant unions that are, or tenant
Yeah,
associations.
we've gained more power today just by being here and signing up to this, because now we have this huge collective behind us.
And we've attended ACOR meetings, and like we've done all of that stuff, and we've even attended like Talk TO. Like, I've been to City of Toronto meetings, and I've touched base with Chris Moisey and is it Brad Bradford, and I've kind of you name the outreach, like they kind of know me. So our ward is, I don't know if you know who Mr. 21 to 1 is. That's
Bradford?
no, that's Stephen Holiday.
Even Doc Holiday.
So he does not like me.
No, he wouldn't.
No. So
Well, the thing is,
feelings mutual.
yeah.
and we've really experienced
At
it.
first, I said, hey, introduced myself, and by the way, there's illegal pumping going on right in front of my building.
Well, see, that's the worst part because Steve's background, he knows that has knowledge on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So he was able to professionally call them on things,
Yeah.
like dead trees and water going into the river.
Well, they were just doing a lot. They were breaking a lot of environmental law. Like, I'm an environmental scientist by trade, and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I'm probably the wrong guy. You want his balcony facing this, but like you got like a bunch of guys pumping illegal sediment into a manhole, and it may look like nothing to people, but like I literally did this for a living for 8 years, and you're in violation. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, because our building, they've received more backdated permits, and I don't mean by a week or two. I mean like in February they got backdated permits back to November.
We could do an entire
Yeah.
story. I'm not.
Y'all
gonna,
gotta come to our building. We'll give you tours.
We could do a full story on our building, and I'm not going to do that today. Right? Today's an AGI talk.
There's a
But
lot of corruption. That's all I'm gonna say.
Today's tenant union talk.
We did hear some horror stories in there, right? And I think like as horrible as they all are, everyone was kind of nodding like they had that shared experience on some level. So I think, yeah, it's so nice to see folks that have very similar stories
well
to you.
documented and well photographed and well videoed and well emailed and well cataloged, and
There's a lot of people here.
yeah, we've been to court and we've been to LTB hearings and been to CMHs, and we've been
And
far
again,
along in our fight.
that's why this is important, because if we're going to have laws changed, legislation changed, like this is, again, the power of these people is what's going to force the politicians to start changing things, because when their voters are angry at them, they're going to have to change their ways. So I'm hoping we can say this. Look out, Mr. Landlord, we're coming for you.
I could show you a Section 37 of the Planning Act legal contract I have with me today that they've completely violated, and they just completely turn a blind eye to. I have a legal contract in my bag right now where the developer and the city came to a legal binding agreement that they would not AGI legacy tenants in my building as per agreement to develop another building on our property.
Okay.
And they just went ahead and AGI'd us 5 straight years anyways, and the city is just basically doing this. La, 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 la.
And the LTB is saying, well, this is Ontario jurisdiction. That document is city,
They're just saying it, we're the province, we don't...
pass the buck.
We supersede the city. And I'm like, but the city negotiated for 11 years to get this, and the developer and the planning department all signed off on this and agreed that legacy tenants, as per this date, August 25th, 2022, don't quote me exactly, but anyways, you get the idea. Anybody living in the building as per this date will not get AGI'd.
They did do you dirty.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And Mr. Holiday, stop returning my emails.
No, like I don't think you could tell me a story about landlords that wouldn't surprise me. But when I hear you talk, I think you're a resource, my friend. When this branch forms, there's some ad hoc members. They are talking. They're like those seniors you were talking about. They don't know where to start. They don't know any of this legalese, and you're like gold, right?
Yeah.
Sharing
And then
this
they try to
knowledge.
tell me, oh no, that's just a draft. That's not a legal contract. That was just a suggestion. And I'm like, it's got a seal from an engineer.
Looks really official.
And not only that, what happens is then it gets read into the city council.
Yeah.
So then it's read into minutes, and then it's passed into bylaw. So it's like all I can say is, trust me. I didn't read it on Wikipedia. Like I'm an environmental scientist by trade. Like you know what I mean? Like I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, it does not surprise me. We know like developers pretty much pay for those campaigns for politicians, so they're in cahoots.
Well, it blew my mind. This is like off topic a little bit, but we didn't realize that this stuff actually happened in real life. You know, we lived in this nice little building. Like before Carterra bought our building, the past owners, there was like, 15 years of no new tenants because no one left.
Nobody left. People literally, and this sounds awful, there was a waiting list to get in our building, and the only way there was a vacancy was somebody passed away. And that's what was sad about our community, is that it was nobody moved.
We're all very nice.
And then an REIT bought our building, and now it's a revolving door. And that's the sad part. And then 5 consecutive years of AGIs. And then, so not to put the train back onto Bruno's day, like we're so ecstatic to be a part of this. I'm hoping, I've told Bruno that if there's anything I can do to help out with what he's doing here, I have volunteered my time, I have volunteered my services. I've also told him in a non-volunteer capacity, I'd be willing to be part of any administration that he's putting together. I'm really hoping that what he does here catches on, like Jerry said. The city really needs this.
That was so much fun to listen to. And honestly, I feel like we're going to have to bring them back into the studio to talk more about this. We couldn't even include everything from that conversation, but there's so much to unpack there. I think one of the things from that conversation that stuck with me the most was the theme of, like, you know, we're all bringing different skills to organizing. You know, everyone has their own skills and abilities, and that's one of the things that, like, a group like the Toronto Tenant Union can make such good use of, is just the diversity of knowledge and skills from across the city, from tenants all over the place, being put together for a common fight. You know, I think that's one of the things that I'm most enthusiastic about seeing come from the launch of this group.
So obviously, in launching any group like this and creating a new structure, they had to hold elections. That was probably my least favorite part of the afternoon. I'm always open to talk about policies and amendments. I think that's fun stuff, even if it did give me flashbacks. But they had 10 positions up for grabs, so to speak. There's 2 co-chairs. I won't run through them all. We'll link some of the documents that they shared with us with you. But 10 elections in total. And, you know, predictably, this was a creation, it was a scaling up of York Southwestern Tenant Union and Climate Justice TO. So, I mean, 7 of them just went acclaimed. Nobody ran against them. I think folks were looking up there going, you've been doing a good job so far. This is kind of your baby. And we're somewhat happy to go along with this. There were 3 positions that were contested that had actual elections and opened the mic to the floor, and we heard some speeches. And now I totally get, like, I'm going to preface this, but I totally get the hesitation folks might have at the idea of, you know, opening up the possibility of having someone who doesn't have experience or perhaps has a completely different vision from what York Southwest Tenants was already doing alongside Climate Justice Toronto. But it would be remiss of us not to mention that near the end of the elections, one of the participants took to the mic to challenge the chair and ask the question, out of the 9 elections we've already had, how many of those positions have gone to existing leadership? And they came back to say, well, 9 out of the 9. 9 out of the 9 had either been already with those 2 organizations that had created this thing. But, you know, the idea was to bring more people under the umbrella. And I think the result of that last vote was a little bit of the crowd voicing that same point, you know, like, let's include some new faces as well. Let's actually make this an opening up of a city-wide union, not just a scaling up of the existing model and leadership structure. And And so in the end, they decided who would lead their steering committee. But this was a moment, again, that had a lot of the elements, or some of the elements, that we dislike about convention.
Yeah. I think this comes from a place of love. I think Jess and I have had a lot of conversations as to how to talk about this, because I'll speak for myself here. I believe very strongly in this group of people. I think the York Southwestern Tenant Union has proven themselves to us, to the city. They fought hard for our rights. And whenever opening it up from something like that, it's a huge challenge. But the reality is to become truly the Toronto Tenant Union, there's going to be a lot of relationship building that needs to be done. We know a lot of ends of the city are underrepresented, whether it's Scarborough and Etobicoke are two huge ones that come to mind, as traditionally being excluded by leftist organizing in general. I'd see a lot of groups that call themselves Toronto anything in this city. That's been something we've seen, as well as working with other groups that already exist. We talk a lot on the left about doubling up of work, and what is the most efficient way to use a resource? Are we, and there are other groups out there.
And I'm confident that these folks, and we're already seeing them work together with other groups, events being planned with Parkdale and with 230 Fight Back, and, there some of the observers.
Moss Park.
Yeah, Acorn was.
The unhoused group, sorry.
No, there's many. It's just and we were all out back with them, right? Hanging out in between speaking parts. But yeah, I'm fully confident moving forward that these folks are going to achieve good things. I think I just went into it doing what we do and having the conversations that we have, and being traumatized by partisan politics. I was hoping that we wouldn't see things like stacking the mic and more deeper discussions. And I'm hoping those will come, because one of the things that they did immediately was slot everybody right into branches, right? And so folks are already connected to so many other people now that they weren't before. And the role of all those folks that were elected is to harness the Steves and Jerrys, right? That skill set that's out there, that enthusiasm that's out there, and work with them. And so far they've been doing a great job at that, right? That's why they were able to get the numbers that they got for this event. So still fully confident, but again, I couldn't not say something about that. But the best part of the event, I think, moving into away from the cafeteria and into the streets, right? We got to go rally outside of the Caseway building at Dundas and Bloor. Residents there are fighting a particularly awful landlord.
Yeah, this is a massive building complex where we were outside of. For anyone who's ever been to Dundas West Station in Toronto, or Bloor Go Station in Toronto, it's the giant brick complex that has the Dollarama out front. And I just gotta say, I think it was a really great move on the part of the Toronto Tenant Union to immediately mobilize us all to fight for the rights of tenants. And we heard some stories from some of the tenants there. We had a bit of a rally outside, and we're just going to share some of the clips we got from that, some of the moments, some of the chants,
And as you listen to these, you have to envision that there are people holding, paper mache cockroaches on sticks. We'll have some visuals up on our social media, and folks have already posted it. And everyone has a falafel in their hand, just a single falafel, not in a pita.
And I'm sure you can hear it on the audio, but it was pouring rain at one point, which was not great timing on Toronto weather. But when has Toronto weather ever had good timing for us?
It's an uphill fight for tenants all the way.
Landlord, get a real job! Get a real job! Landlord, landlord! should they get? REIT. Do they have one? No. What do they do?
Collect their money. REIT.
And also it's very important that we all come together and we are treated with respect, fairness, and that our voices are being heard. All you need to do is pay attention to your neighbors on your floors.
That's right.
Just pay attention, reach out. If it's a senior, if it's someone with disabilities, reach out. Exchange names. If you have a neighbor that has difficulty speaking the language, they are usually treated a little different. And I don't like that. So offer to be the voice for them. It is, I think what I'm going to suggest is that if one person per floor, one, could take a couple of hours a month just to check in with your neighbors on that floor, 2 hours a month, and find out exactly what is happening, what are the issues. We could have a better way of communicating faster with the rest of the association. Anyway, just one more thing. Alone, we cannot do much. But we can do a lot if we come together and we support each other.
Now, as the event was winding down, we did get the chance to talk to one of the tenants from this building a bit more in depth of their struggle.
Yeah, Bridgette was more than happy to share probably just a glimpse of how awful those landlords have been, how they have reacted to tenants organizing, and what she thinks that the formation of the Toronto Tenant Union is going to bring to that fight. Let's listen to Bridgette.
Okay, so following the historical creation of the Toronto Tenant Union, the first act of business was to march over to the building that we're at now, called the Crossways, and show support for the tenants here. You're one of those tenants. Yes. Why are we here to support you? What's the battle that's going on with your landlord?
Well, first and foremost, we had attempted with Carmen's help to form our own little union, and we did deliver, like our terms, that we'd appreciate them to have a more methodical pest control plan than the whack-a-mole method they currently have of, pest control comes every week and just hits the active infestations. When the pest vendor himself has said, no, you need to spray the hallways, and we know of other buildings who have gone floor by floor to flush them out of the bones of the building. We did hand that to them face-to-face October 17th of last year. So we are,
My math is really bad. We're at 6 months
now, and they can't even respond in 5 to 7 business days, let alone weeks, let alone the same year. So we're really getting fed up, between. It's almost like a bait and switch. You come in, when you tour, they're all friendly and kind. They seem they're really about the human connection. Then as soon as you paid that last month and you sign the lease, you're a number. They don't care.
This is in an environment where Doug Ford passed legislation where you miss your rent for a day and they can try to file for eviction. So, there's timelines for you and then there's timelines for landlords. So what do you hope that the city gains from something like the Toronto Tenant Union that would essentially help support the efforts that are already going on?
I hope that it inspires people to be, unafraid, more brave. I'm sure, there were attempts to form a union in this building quite some time ago, and in 2018, I think there was a news article about it where they just tried to meet in the mall, public open property, and management called the cops on them. They weren't even protests, they were just trying to have a meeting. So I hope this inspires other people in our building, in buildings across the city, that now that, the unions have amalgamated to one big beast, we will have that ability to fight these giant corporations, and that they just sign up and join us.
What already has come from, the work of Climate Justice TO and York Southwestern tenants that have facilitated the efforts here?
Oh, well, Carmen has led the way and just kind of helped us form our structure. how we should be doing things. We're having that demand was a big first step, us finding our voice to just nail it down what our issues are in order of urgency.
If you had a message for the Toronto Tenant Union that's just formed, what would you say to them?
To the union?
Yes,
our
union
union
that just signed up. That are
yes,
super excited.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm happy that people are taking the lead and we're being the change we want to see. We're making the demands that no one else is making for us.
I do have one question about your landlord and how maybe the relationship or their attitude, did it shift after the formation of a union? Were there hostilities at first? What's the story there?
Oh, absolutely. Constantly accosted by security, even though tenant union and their activity is completely legal. And we're being extremely respectful to our fellow neighbors. If nobody wants to participate, we make a note. That's fine. We don't bother them again. We don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. We're still going to fight for you. And it's when we made that handoff, we very much got a not veiled at all threat of we're aware who each and every single one of you are. So that's who we're dealing with. The intimidation, the constant just trying to scare us down.
Landlords using the same tired tactics that they'd use against an individual, trying to use it against a collection of tenants is quite laughable. Yeah. So I'm hoping this gathering you think this is a push on your landlords? Do you think you'll get a response?
Oh, absolutely, because it's clear they don't care about, us faceless nobodies just paying our rent timely every month. But they will care once the politicians and the news outlets that came out today start to push this, and we get invited to speak in larger forums if they continue to want to play this game.
What happens if they don't listen? What's your next step?
I think we just call in even more oversight, more connections that we know, because they can't keep doing this. They can't keep raising the rent and doing nothing. They continually invent illegal charges, just like I said, for the bulbs, for the fuses, that's covered under just the normal wear and tear. And meanwhile, they recently tried to give a tenant a $1,000 bill for their smoke detector going off. And then they tried to blame the city's finest, the Toronto Fire Department, shout out to Captain Mongo and the boys at the 341, when everybody knows that bill goes to landlords like this to make sure that their systems are working. And if these are continually going off because it's faulty, the landlord's got to fix it. They can't, that's their bill to pay.
They do not want to incur one penny of cost of doing business. The AGIs are all about recouping the costs. Even though their capital investment increased in value, but they're nickel and diming now.
Right. Meanwhile, as they continue to claw back amenities in our building as well. Like Carmen mentioned, and it was all over the news, our transformer blew 2 times in one summer. That left everyone without power,
without AC.
So our all-included utilities for a week, no rent abatement, as well as shutting down our pool for months, no rent abatement. The saunas have been closed, apparently, according to some of the older tenants, for more than a decade or so. There was a gym. It was still actually advertised when we came to view it, and I asked, where'd the gym go? Oh, it's gone because of COVID. I'm like, but why? When's it coming back?
Not gone off the listing.
So,
the advertising.
But, there was a games room. There were saunas. There were,
there's shrinkflation even when it comes to the amenities at your apartment buildings.
Mm-hmm.
There's the amount of profits they're already turning. That's maddening. That is absolutely maddening. What's the vibe now that you're mingling amongst your fellow residents?
Yeah, I think people are feeling empowered, Like I said, we were very happy and we're very kind, giving them the benefit of the doubt when we first got here. And then when we got the first break-in, and they changed our locks, and then we got the second break-in, with a key, and we were told they recycled locks. That's when it's clear you really don't. There's no respect for me on your end, so you're going to get our cold business. We're documenting everything, we're reporting everything, And I hope that's what the other tenants and everyone else who signed up to this union feels. They feel empowered because they do have rights, despite them trying to intimidate you that you don't.
Amazing. Well, the best of luck to you and your fellow residents.
Answer all your questions.
You did. It was amazing. Thank you.
Before we left the event, we were able to also catch two of the new steering committee members. Not ironically, each of them were from one of the founding organizations we've been talking so highly of, and both of them former guests of Blueprints. So maybe that's why they agreed to talk to us. No. But Aniket was up first. He had just been elected as a regional rep.
We spoke before.
We did speak before.
Right on like kind of the precipice, I think, of Climate Justice Toronto making this transition from a climate justice organization to something, you were a bit of in transition, but I felt like it was like a staffing warehouse for tenant unions. You had that goal that building class consciousness was the key to fighting for climate justice, but you were just going to go at it. So right, you had on the precipice of shifting, you guys you're going to focus on class consciousness, I said all that. So how do you feel now that Climate Justice Toronto has dissolved and is something wholly different, but a key part of this Toronto Tenants Union? What's it feel like?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things to it, Like, on one hand, of course, CJTO is such a big part of my life and other people's lives, but we did vote to do this, and I think that it reflects where we were going, and I think it reflects what we need right now. I mean, we had, I think, over 400 people sign up to join, and I think final numbers were between 200 and 300 people that came out today. And I think it shows a real need in the city of where we need to go as the left on the movement to get people to come out and talk to us. Because I think one of the issues that we were honest with ourselves about is that we can't stay in our bubble. We need to meet people where they're at. We need to meet people who are facing issues of rent, of housing issues, of pests, of lack of maintenance. And as tenants, as renters, are not being treated fairly by their landlords. And I think because that's such an acute issue today in Toronto, there's a great opportunity for us to bring that climate angle, whether it's on heat or lack of heat, whether it's on flooding or other climate issues, and organize people on those, but not only those, but more than that, on issues like rent, which they feel so acutely in Toronto.
I think some people from the outside might look at it as an abandonment of the climate justice fight, but I mean, you articulated that so well, how those are the same fights you were... Yay. Those are the same fights you're doing now, but it's where you're meeting people. Why did you choose, not you singularly, but as a collective, tenant organizing? There should have been other ways, or surely there could have been other ways to reach more people or appeal to a broader spectrum, but you went the tenant union way. Why?
I'd say we actually did have the same conversation a couple years ago, and we were thinking, okay, maybe housing, maybe labor, maybe transit. And I'd say it's a mix of relationships we had and also just the political moment. We endorsed Kiara Padavani for city council, then we went on to support the rent strikes, we helped defend evictions, then our own folks started launching tenant organizing campaigns. And, I think that caught on more than the other things because it speaks to just how big an issue housing is in the city right now, that people were like, I remember this moment in the rent strike where I was knocking on doors, are you going to pledge to withhold your rent, so on and so forth. And someone didn't open their door, and I'm walking down the hall, and someone opens their door and chases after me. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to call the cops or something. And she's like, are you the rent strike people? I was like, yeah, I'm helping with the tenant union. She's like, I want to join the rent strike, sign me up. And I was like, I think that really speaks to what people really feel in the city right now, that there's a problem, but there's also a chance for hope by fighting together.
You got hooked a little bit on tenant organizing. Would you say you were seeing tangible results, whereas after decades of environmental activism, we heard a speaker at the convention say, I think, and we had nothing really to show for it. Nothing had really changed. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember the 2019 climate strike, which I was not around in CJTO at that time, but people before me helped organize, and it was one of the biggest demonstrations in the city, you know. Um, and, you know, I think everyone today will say, compared to 10 years ago, rent is higher, affordability is worse, we have fewer protections, and the climate crisis is getting worse. And I think it speaks to both, you know, we raised a lot of awareness, but we didn't build power strategically enough. And I think that is, unfortunately, a real loss we have to sit with. But I think that many people see that now, and I think that speaks to, you know, people getting involved, either it's in their unions or in different organizations. Of course, the election of Avi Lewis as like a left populist candidate, and of course in the Toronto Tenant Union. I think people are sitting with those losses and thinking, no, there is something we can do. It's done before. We can go out, we can meet people where they're at, and we can organize the unorganized.
A question about the beginning. So climate justice TO, transitioning, it's all new beginnings, new growing pains. We saw a little bit at any convention, you'll see it, but this was a founding convention. Do you want to comment on what it's like now having to do this all over again? It's like you wander into something new, figure out what it's going to look like, and you know, you're a branch chair?
Yeah, branch rep, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A branch rep now for downtown.
Yeah.
A lot of work to do there. How's that going to look?
Look, I mean, I think I had a conversation with another member of another org who walked in, and you know, we were talking about, yeah, there are some kerfuffles today, but at the end of the day, we all want the same things for where we're at. There might be little differences in strategy and vision, but I think we're aware of how little we have on the left and how few people we have. And I think the important thing for us to remember and to tell each other is we can have our disagreements, but at the end of the day, we agree on so much more, and we can work from that agreement. And we're going to have some difficulties, some growing pains, some disagreements along the way, but there's so much we agree with and so much we can work together on.
Do you have any final thoughts on, you know, you've planned this for, I don't know, how long have you been planning this event today?
I think the convention committee started in January, but both orgs voted to start this in September.
Okay, wow. So tomorrow might feel a little bit like a vacation, right? Because you've built up to this. How are you feeling now that you've seen it all pulled off and you've seen everybody else's reaction to it and you were elected?
I mean, it's incredibly exciting, you know. I think that we always want all these people to come together, and it's so great to see 200, 300 people not only like sign something or, you know, come out to a demonstration, but come out to a convention, which is no small commitment. And beyond that, I think it speaks to the organizing that's been done, that we had many tenants who I don't think saw themselves as political people 10 years ago, who were at this and participating and voting and speaking. I wish there were more people who were outside of that activist bubble. I do think there was a lot of people like myself who are in that kind of activist world already. And I think that just speaks to the work we still have to do. But I think it's an excellent start, and I think there's so much excitement for where we're going to go.
I thought it was refreshing when most people didn't know what call to question was.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh, this is so nice.
Yeah.
But, you know, we did have to deal with a bit of Robert's rules. I want to ask you a question, one about your role as a downtown rep and bringing other existing tenant unions into the fold. There's some great organizations already down there, like Parkdale Organizing is just one example. What can you do to amalgamate everybody in some way?
I mean, look, I think it's just working from what we have in common and seeing what people are comfortable with. You know, CJTO and YSW Tenant Union, we decided to merge. We took the time to reach out to different orgs. Some people decided, you know, maybe not yet, maybe a year or two down the road, that's fine. I think as long as we can work together on issues we face in common, and as a union have, you know, not be pulled in 10 different ways, but respect, hey, we're doing this in our org, you guys are doing that in your org, let's do what we can together and go from there. I think one thing I also want to say, especially in this new role as downtown rep, I think it'll be so important to really send people out to the suburbs and support people in the suburbs. I think today was a disproportionately downtown event.
Most populated branch meeting?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But, and you know, like these are ridings which swing NDP sometimes. They have, you know, that kind of base that's sympathetic to left-wing candidates, left-wing politics. But the suburbs is not that. Many people don't see themselves as anywhere near this world in the suburbs. And I think it'll be, there's a lot of fights we have to take up in the downtown and, join hands together. But I think it'll be really important for us to also think about how do we support our very studious organizers in the suburbs.
Yeah, you've got your share of floor captains, right? You're kind of hogging them. You're going to have to share some of these organizers with the rest and get some growth. I'm excited to see how many more branches shape out and what this goes. Maybe we can hit up a branch meeting once and see what those are like. But we appreciate you taking the time and inviting us to this. And this has been historic, I think.
And I'm glad that you guys could come to cover it.
That conversation really ties together that long journey that we've been covering of the climate justice TO's transition to this. And we're so excited now for this new chapter that they're on. And we really wish them the best of luck. To cap off the evening, we got to talk to one of my personal favorite guests we've ever had on this show, Bruno, who is now newly elected co-chair of the Toronto Tenant Union, who has been working behind the scenes for the past few months to put this whole event together. And we know how stressful something like that can be. So now we're at the end of the day, end of the road. I'm eating some, what were they? Dumplings? Like fried dumplings?
The balls?
Yeah.
Those are falafels.
No, they had falafels, but I was also eating those fried.
I'm like, how do you not know what a falafel is?
No, I know what a falafel. I'm Lebanese.
I know. I didn't want to say that. I was like, can I say that? Am I allowed to say that?
So we catch up with Bruno, hands full of food before they pack up for the day to see what his feelings are about how the day went. Let's listen to Bruno.
Bruno, you pulled it off, buddy.
We did it. Very excited, very, very happy. I'm super excited. Like, I just feel the energy coming out of it, and it's a bit of weight on my shoulders, but it's okay. It's okay.
It is or was?
No, it is now.
Now, because you're co-chair.
Yes, we're co-chairing the whole city, and it's like. But anyways, I'm excited. Yeah.
You can handle it. You've got a great co-chair to work with.
Fantastic. Yeah. My
people
neighbor.
You've worked with before.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be chewing. It's these falafels.
Yeah, I know.
They're so good, eh?
My hand's full of dumplings.
They're definitely feeding us all day. We've been fed and we've been treated great. We've enjoyed ourselves. Is it everything you expected?
Yes, I think it was more than I expected. I think there's always, to me, I always worry that is there people going to show up? There's a question when you're organizing something. So it's really in that sense, it was surpassed my expectations. Even the debates that we had, I thought were great. Obviously, we could have them for longer.
It's not always the case.
Yeah, but it was just very refreshing to me just to have those discussions, have those debates, get people voting on it, and just having so many more people that now own the organization too, right? That they feel part of something bigger. Like, I've just been talking to people from all over the city since we wrapped up, that they're saying, hey, okay, when are we doing one meeting in North York, another one in Scarborough? There's so much hunger for it. That's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. We thought we'd interviewed not all the tenant organizing that's happening, but we came across so many more horror stories of awful landlords, but at the same time, they all had origin stories as well. A lot of them involved York Southwestern Tenant Union, now known as the Toronto Tenant Union. So is anything going to fundamentally change about how you do what you do, just in larger numbers?
I hope it doesn't, because I don't think we have a secret sauce, but I think we have a system that has worked to put landlords on notice, to organize people, and especially I would say to organize people that are not used to getting organized. So I think that's something that to me is very important. We have a huge community of organizers who are just naturally at it, just reaching out to people who are not necessarily the usual suspects. I think we've done that very well, and I just hope that now it's going to be a bigger scale.
Yeah, it looks like we have a little bit of work to do in the East End, right? When we had everyone who's from Scarborough, there were people there, they were enthusiastic, but clearly the concentration is in the core. What are you going to do to get folks in Scarborough a little bit more organized or into the fold?
Definitely, so reach out to them. I think going to buildings, we have identified already quite a few
it's hard
buildings.
to get there with such shit transit.
Yeah, exactly. So First, fight for better transit. Yeah. No, but we already have identified buildings that we think could be good just because of the issues they're going through. Especially above guideline rent increases is like this horrible thing. That's actually the one positive benefit is that you need to fight it collectively. So any building that's going, you have to. Yeah, there's no other option. Any building that's going through that, it's really prone for organizing. It's like the easiest signaling to get a building organized. So that's what we're gonna do. Go see, and I also think after all of this, we'll be getting a lot more attention from the rest of the city. So I'm really hoping that folks in Scarborough are gonna come out and say, hey, we didn't know about this. Nobody told us. I was like, sorry, we tried, but come in, like, welcome.
That's half the battle when you throw these events, right? They're good, they're well planned, well intentioned, needed, but how do you get everybody to hear about it when the algorithm hates us and word of mouth isn't what it used to be? But people were definitely showing up today and they really wanted to talk.
Yes.
Like leftists always want to talk, but it was across the spectrum a little bit. But you get a room of us and microphones and it'll never stop. How do you feel about the political discussions that kind of happened on the floor today?
I think they were amazing. That was my other doubt is, are people going to really want to have amendments? I was like, maybe people are like, yeah, some people, but I was expecting way less. And I just thought that was, to me, that was very healthy as a start. Like, okay, actually, I want this amendment because I want to be part of this. And I really, really, appreciated that. Those are difficult discussions. Like, I actually also think that we may not resolve them with a vote either way. We're going to have to work through it. My hope is that, one, people stick around, right? Even when you might not always get the way you want. I think in organizing space is really important to recognize that, to stick around, to fight for the way you want it. It's important. And then the other thing is that we got so many people to organize across the city. Like the union density of the tenant movement, it's minimal. It's there somewhat, but it's minimal. So I think we got something for everybody, basically. There's so much to go get that I'm not worried that, people are just going to tune out.
No, I don't think there's any tuning this out. Let's hope we get to the point where, every time they think about issuing an AGI, they're like, oh, every time we do that really, you get a fucking union out of it, and then we got to deal with them, and maybe there's another way we can nickel and dime them to death. I don't know, but make them think twice about it. But what's your first order of business, Mr. Co-Chair? What do you guys got to do?
Oh, my God.
What's your first thing you're going to talk about?
Finances after the convention.
No. That's a treasurer's problem.
Yeah. No, I think the first order of business is definitely going to be like, okay, over almost 500 people registered to this. How do we plug them in, whether they were able to make it or not, but they definitely want to be part. So we got that. That's like...
You got a lot of onboarding to do, my friend.
A lot of onboarding, but usually those 500 people represent another 100 each because they often live in these big buildings, and so that already kind of gives us, that's where we go. That's it. Yeah.
I can't wait to see how many floor captains come out of this. And
amazing, this building. Yeah, like they have, so the Crossway, the tenants were really organized at the beginning. So yeah, floor cut, something we didn't do before, and it was just their idea. Fantastic. Yeah.
And they said that you guys really helped. So yeah, big things to come. We'll have to pull you into the studio maybe 6 months from now and see how the growing pains are going, right?
Definitely,
There's going to be them, but it was a respectful dialogue that happened. And yeah, I think you should be very proud of what you and your comrades have done here today.
Thank you, and really thank you to both of you to being part of this political project in many ways. I think communications is just so important. We can rely on mainstream media. We all know the challenges, and to me, it's just so good to have folks like you covering us and many other movements. Right? It's just a space where we can really just say what we think without the 1 minute. Is this going to sound crazy to these people, Right.
We never edit the crazy.
Exactly.
Thank you, Bruno.
All right.
Best of luck.
No, thank you so much.
Although Bruno's the perfect person to end off with, we still want to talk about how we all felt about the event as well. And I think just like moving forward, perhaps a bit of a wish list for what we hope to get out. I mean, Steve and Jerry used the example of some of the bylaws that have been passed in Hamilton, but I'm thinking bigger than that. As good as those anti-rent eviction bylaws are and progress to be made in electoral politics. I think I'm more hopeful about the magnitude and the political power that Ricardo referred to.
I'm extremely hopeful. I think now, whenever a group of people in Toronto, in any building, anywhere in the city, have questions as to how do we get this started, they're going to have someone to turn to. There's not nearly enough legal representation for tenants as well in the city. We heard firsthand how a lot of the resources, even the landlord and tenant board puts out for how to get representation, lead nowhere. Well, when people have questions as to what are their rights, what can we do, how do we fight, who do I talk to, they're going to have somewhere to turn to, you know? And landlords are going to have to think twice when fighting to take away our rights, because we're going to be more organized than ever to fight back. We're going to be able to mobilize en masse. And I think it's really exciting now to see this. I really hope, I think, and I have reason to be hopeful, having seen how they, at the end, near the end of the day, you know, they broke off into different groups representing the different areas of the city. I'm very hopeful, and also based off of what what we were told by the various leaders of the Toronto Tenant Union, that there will be efforts to organize in the neighborhoods where tenant organizing maybe hasn't been a part of their reality. I think that's just so important.
I want to take a second, though, to talk about a little bit of the elephant in the room. And it was, you know, for us, Santiago and I, we've interviewed a lot of tenant unions. I think we were expecting to kind of see them all there. They weren't. You know, some of the bigger names that folks will recognize, at least from our show, you know, 230 Fight Back, Parkdale, weren't noticeably there. Some perhaps were observers. But I think as we digested it and thought about our perspective on organizing and how we recognize it's a diversity of tactics, and we're we don't like labels, but both of us are a bit anarchists. And so I think the question is, does it need to be one union, you know, under one umbrella, one structure? And I think the answer is no. Anikit talked about maybe down the road, you know, you would have some more larger tenant unions signing on to this, you know, as well as continually signing on other buildings and ad hoc members. But the reality is perhaps that these groups can work alongside together and team up when important, and are allowed to operate with perhaps some ideological differences, if that's, you know, what they need to do.
Yeah. I mean, we don't see a single union representing all workplaces across Canada. It would be, by the same sense, it makes sense to have different tenant groups with different goals and different focuses and different ideologies. I mean, this is the diversity of tactics that is something we always talk about in this show. You know, this is the fight. This is how we do the fight. You know, because at any moment in time, you know, one convention goes wrong, we get too heated about a fight, half the members quit. You know, I've seen it happen. We've all seen it happen. You know, we fight, we disagree. Well, it's important not to put all our hopes into any one organization, but to have the resilience that only comes from having multiple organizations doing the work.
I think, yeah, the unique thing, too, about tenant organizing is your opponent is so clear. There's not a whole lot of discussion on who should we be pointing our energies towards, right? And it allows that common ground, right, where other differences can exist. When you organize a building, it's like a workplace. You don't get to handpick the political ideologies of everyone from the get-go. You need as many people on board as possible. But having a common, clear enemy, because you have shared experiences with said enemy, not just imagined, you didn't read it in a book. It's their lives. And I think that's what makes me so hopeful about tenant organizing in this city and across Canada, because Vancouver has a giant tenants union as well that incorporates branches across the city. They're very tenant rich. And so we just imagine, should they all get their shit together and all be working on some level with one another, if they choose to point that energy all at the same time in the same direction for the same end, can you only imagine what you could accomplish, right?
Yeah.
And that gets you all tingly.
I think one of the things that's so cool also about this that, we haven't touched on, we're talking about the concept of tenant union as if that's something that exists in any legal framework, There's no such thing as a tenant union in any Canadian laws. Unions in workplaces have certain rights and structures, and part of being recognized legally has been legal concessions, where unions are sometimes scared and hesitant to move forward due to those legal constraints. With there not being any such thing as a tenant union, it's both a terrifying thing, because anything you do, you're making up as you go along. There's no legal protections for you, but also there's not those limitations that come with that, So
it can be whatever you want it to be.
It can be whatever you want it to be. So I'm really excited. I'm just excited to see tenant organizing continue to grow in Toronto. I think it's such an important front in the battle that really extends far beyond simply tenants. This is the battle against capitalism, the battle against this colonialist society we live in. There was no landlords before colonialism, so I'm hopeful. I can't wait to see what comes next.
Why don't we end this with a little bit more audio from angry tenants? Angry but organized tenants.
Today marks the launch of the Toronto Tenant Union. As Charlene said, this is a turning point for housing in this city. From now on, we are not going to be accepting rents that go up every single year and the quality goes down. We are not going to be accepting rents that go up every single year, and we have to leave this city. We have to be pushed out of this city. We all deserve a city we can live in. We deserve a city that is beautiful. We deserve a city that is safe, where we have cooling in the summers and when we warm in the winters, and where we can raise our kids in a beautiful city that we all enjoy. That is something we are going to be building starting today, April 18, 2026. Mark your calendars, because people are going to be talking about it. All right?
That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Also, a very big thank you to the producer of our show, Santiago Halu Quintero. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.